Welcome, everyone, back to another DeFi Raiders AMA. I'm Degenic, and today we're talking to, I think, Tony on the Satin exchange handle there.
That's actually, it's actually Chase. Yeah, I'm the COO. It's the company Twitter, so I just kind of hijack it every so often.
Cool. Well, nice to meet you, Chase. Thanks for joining us.
Well.
So yeah, we're really excited to hear from you and talk about what you built and future plans. I think the existing product is cool, and certainly we're very excited for the upcoming product. So to start us off, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little more about your role and how you got started in DeFi and connected with this team?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Chase. I'm the COO of Stable Labs. Stable Labs is the sort of umbrella group that has the two products, Cash and Satin Exchange, which I'm sure we'll get into in detail. I got into DeFi. I guess I got into DeFi through crypto mining. Back in 2020-ish is when I started mining, but I had dabbled in crypto for probably since 2017. But then I got into mining and I started accumulating all this stuff, and I'm like, what do I do with all this? It's just, you hear about these crazy APYs, and it just isn't that on, back in the day it was a Celsius and whatnot. So that's kind of when I started hopping on YouTube and looking at different opportunities and starting to understand, and then the rest is history. I mean, once you get sucked into the DeFi world, it's just really no getting out of it. It's just too exciting. It's too much fun. Tony, I work with a few different protocols, and Tony kind of linked up with me through one of them, and that was kind of it. I guess he liked what I was doing there and wanted me to do the same thing here. So that's kind of how we all got linked up.
Oh, cool. So is there anyone else on the team?
Yeah, so Tony and James are the co-founders. I'm the COO, and then Sam is our marketing lead, but he's not on here. So, but I mean, and of course there's the whole dev team of about, I don't know, another 4 or 5 guys. The co-founders they're not dev illiterate, but they do contract a team for all this stuff, because it's definitely a lot of moving pieces on these products.
Yeah, for sure it is, especially on these solid forks, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, so would you start us off with a quick overview of the existing product of StableFi before we get into Satin? I think the Cash token I think it's going to be important later in the conversation.
Yeah. One does inevitably lead to the other. So we built this stable coin called Cash. It's a yield-bearing stable coin. If you're familiar with the concept of, say, a USD plus, we actually forked the code from OUSD, which is a similar concept on the Ethereum blockchain. Very battle-tested, been around for a long time, lots of extremely high-level audits. And so it was, we found it to be a much safer code to fork it off of. And, if you're not familiar with the concept of a yield-bearing stable, it goes something like this. You take your I call them layer 1 stables, like USDC, USDT, DAI. You deposit them into the protocol. You get an equal amount of cash in return. And what happens on the back end is that collateral is farmed. It's put into traditional stablecoin farming strategies that you can find anywhere, and it farms on your behalf. And the yield that is farmed every day is then transferred to your wallet, of course, as a share of the cash that you own in relation to everybody else. And so it's essentially, it takes the work out of farming for you. And that's not unlike any other yield-bearing stable. Where Cash has differed, and this is the part that we're very excited about in this space, is that if you understand the concept of DAI, where people lock Ethereum and they lock it at, let's say, if they want to get 100 DAI, they're going to lock $150 or $200 worth of Ethereum. They over collateralize the vault to get their stablecoin. And so that's because of volatility. Now, the sort of prevailing wisdom is that with a yield-bearing stablecoin, you don't have to do that because you're depositing stables, right? And by and large, that's almost always true. But there has been sort of, unfortunate events with other tokens where that hasn't been the case, and there's been a loss of funds, and there's no collateralization to back that up. And so with the cash token, we are remedying this by several different tokenomics that will increase the collateralization ratio in relation to the cash in circulation. That's kind of hard. Maybe it's maybe tough to explain without having like a visual, but picture, if you deposit 100 USDC, you get 100 cash back. Now, over time, if you were the only person in this pool, over time, you would end up growing that collateral. So you would have, let's say, in a year, maybe you'd have $110 of collateral to that same 100 cash. And what this does is two things. For one, as you can probably guess, more collateral means more insurance, right? It's safe. If there was some sort of very unlikely event of a loss of funds, on the back end, we can compensate the cash holders. But the fun part is that it also increases the relative yields of each cash token. So if you have one cash token and that cash token has, $1.25 of collateral farming for it, well, now you're farming at 25% more efficiency than you could even do by yourself. Even, if you wanted to put your own, dollar 50 cents of USDC and 50 cents of USDT and put it on Uniswap, if you bought a or minted a cash token instead, and we had that exact same strategy, you would get 25% better returns because there's just more working for you. And so that's, as far as I know, that hasn't been done in the yield-bearing stablecoin space, which is admittedly a new space to begin with. But we believe that this is sort of the magic bullet of stablecoins. I mean, I think we're really onto something here. And the other thing that is definitely unique is that cash is the only yield-bearing stable that gets an infusion of external revenue, of new money coming into the collateral treasury. And that's where Satin DEX comes in. So that hasn't been done, and that will add to that collateralization ratio.
Yeah, that's very cool. And that was exactly what jumped out at me reading the docs was the over collateralization, and that it's also the case that the redemption rate is not quite fixed in that it can be, is it 1-to-1 USD but not quite 1-to-1 DAI, say?
Well, I think when you mint, it is a 1-to-1. Once Satin DEX launches, because at the moment, cash is still in beta. Nothing's wrong with it. Nothing's happened to it. We just want to make sure that everything's set before Satin DEX launch. But once the DEX launches and there's actual liquidity for trading and such, there could be arbitrage opportunities. I'm not really sure, but the minting and the redemption is 1-to-1 for the moment.
Okay, cool.
But I mean, the Satin DEX is where it is a solidly fork, but at this point in the game, like calling it a solidly fork is almost unfair to Satin. Tony likes to say it's solidly reimagined, which is very cliche and corny, but there's a lot of features on this that are not, that you won't find on a traditional solidly typed DEX. And the one that could potentially most prominent is that cash is featured on this DEX. What that means is that whereas, let's say you had a Matic USDC LP, you would put it on a DEX, you would, you get the trading fees if it's a traditional DEX, or you get emissions if it's a solidly fork or whatnot, and so on and so forth. But all of those yields are dependent on the DEX itself, right? It's dependent on how much, trading volume is going through that DEX. It's dependent on what the emissions are, like what the token emissions are, what that token's worth, what the APR is, and so on, all that stuff. With Satin, if you were to instead pair that same Matic with cash, you now have a brand new income stream of stablecoin revenue, because you're just by pairing it, the cash is still rebasing. It's still generating income from the farming yields. And so not only do you get to claim Satin emissions, you also claim cash rebases. So you're getting two streams of income for that one LP, and that's not even counting all the the governance type of benefits that come with it as well.
Right, and this for sure is unique. I've only really heard of Beethoven doing this. The balancer fork on Phantom, where their governance is a Phantom beats LP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, but this is also true of any cash LP. So the government, you're right, the governance LP is a cash LP as well. It's a instead of a single token that you would lock up for governance power, you're locking up the Satin Cash LP token, which has, of course, several benefits. Besides all the regular solidly benefits like being able to collect the trading fees on the pair that you vote for. You would get the bribes, right? If there's bribes on the LP, you could chase that bribe income. But because it's an LP itself, you're also entitled to the Satin emissions if people vote for that. And I am quite sure they're going to. We're actually going to have a cap on the amount of votes that can go to that LP, just because we want to make sure that people don't just dump all their votes to that LP. But you're going to get the Satin emissions, which are probably going to be quite lucrative. And you're getting, because it's a cash LP, you're getting the cash on top of that. So, I mean, right off the bat, the Satin Cash LP is in my mind, it's going to be the most lucrative governance lock that's available. I mean, it just clear it away because there's additional streams of income.
Yeah, that makes sense. So why Polygon? It seems like a particularly competitive place to be a DEX, even though I think you guys are going to be the first. Maybe we should be calling them velodrome forks at this point.
Well, yeah, and we did steal something from Velodrome in that the cash pairs also. So the cash, if you have a cash LP, 70% of the rebase is claimable as a reward. And then another 15% is sent to that LP as a bribe, as an auto bribe. So the deeper the liquidity on a particular cash pair, the more that pair is going to be bribed by default. And so we like that sort of thing that Velodrome did with I think it was USD Plus or somebody. And so we sort of took that as well. We're just kind of picked and chose the best parts of each of them. Except I forgot the original question. I think you would ask me something. I kind of just went on a rant there.
No, that's fascinating, though. I didn't know about that feature of velodromes either, so that's a really interesting one to pick up. But the original question was why Polygon? It seems like a hard place to be a DEX with all of Uniswap, Balancer, and Curve having pretty big footprints.
Well, they do, but we are also the only. I'm not going to say we're the only solidly DEX on Polygon. But there was, I should say was. I mean, technically, Dystopia is still around, but I mean, they've fallen on hard times, and so there really isn't a lot of competition for when it comes to solidly DEXs. And although there is a lot of DEXs on Polygon, we also have very competitive trading fees for that reason to compete, to attract liquidity. Another one is we have a 4-pool, which I don't recall in any other solidly DEX. We have a stablecoin 4-pool, which is USDC, USDT, DAI, and Cash. And so we thought it would be better to have a sort of balancer style LP to just to centralize the liquidity and just to be able to deepen it in that way. And plus, it's also yield bearing because it's a cash pair, so that's also pretty nice too. So even though there is competition, Polygon also is such a fantastic chain because just the partnerships they have are just unreal. And I personally believe, and the team agrees that come the next bull run, I believe it's going to be the run of Polygon. Honestly, just because they're doing all this stuff now on the back end, and regardless of what is the sort of the media narrative about the cryptosphere, a lot of the big boys are still partnering with little Polygon. So we are very bullish on Polygon, and we think it's going to be a very good place to have a protocol, when the tides turn.
Yeah, cool. And certainly that I've heard from everybody I've asked that question to. I think everybody says they love working with the Polygon Foundation.
They're very protocol friendly. They are, with the grant programs, and they just are very eager to offer support for protocols on their chain, in lots of different ways. Even if it's just, sometimes they help with marketing, and they're just, it just seems like a very well run team, and we're happy to be there.
Yeah, very cool. And so speaking of partnerships, I was going to ask this later, but since you mentioned it, we might as well continue. I also saw Spear up there on the website. Any others that you can announce?
Yeah. So we do have a nice selection of launch partners: Spear, Lido, Stater, Klima, Otterclam. Boy, I know I'm missing a couple. Cheetao, Beefy. If it's a large protocol on Polygon, there's a good chance that Tony has reached out and built a relationship with them. And so, yeah, we have a lot of there's a lot of excitement. Again, Satin Dex, which is something I didn't really mention. Satin Dex is sort of we built Satin Dex around the idea that it could be a protocol for four protocols, and that's because protocols have, and I wrote a Medium article about this, but protocols have a lot of times a good deal of native liquidity, right? And it depends on the protocol, of course, and how popular they are and how much trading volume runs through them. But a lot of times this protocol-owned native LP is, a lot of times it's kind of dormant, it depends. If you have a treasury that's, let's say you're not that big, you got a treasury that's, say, $2 million, a lot of times that POL can be 400-500K. That's a lot of your treasury that may not be generating that much in the way of trading fees, and so it could just be kind of taking up space, so to speak. And so with the Satin Dex, you have now a way to really capitalize on that from a protocol perspective. Because if you have a whatever USDC native LP doing next to nothing, maybe a couple grand per year in trading fees, now you can move over to Satin. You can pair it instead with cash. So right off the bat, you're getting cash rebases, and you're getting that stream of income. You're getting bribes sent to the LP, so people would be more incentivized to vote for it. If you went and locked up some governance yourself, you could vote for the LP, as a protocol, bringing Satin emissions to it as well. Not to mention the benefits that you get from just being a Satin locker, a VE Satin locker, right? The Satin emissions and the cash rebases. So you see what I'm saying though? Like, there's a lot of reasons that protocols might want to park their liquidity here, especially if they have the necessary evil of protocol on liquidity, and they're a smaller, maybe not as known protocol that's just not that's it's not doing a whole lot for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And certainly, I've heard reports of bribes, on some of these being positive ROI or close to it for protocols.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. I think it was something like every dollar you spend on bribes nets in like $1.30 or $1.40, something like that. It was. If the report is true, it's really quite lucrative, seemingly.
It's certainly going to be really interesting to see as it continues to develop.
Yeah, and bribes are, there's really two things that keep a solid lead DEX afloat, and that is liquidity, of course. Liquidity keeps everything afloat, and bribes. Bribes. Once the bribes on Dystopia dried up, there was a time when Lido was really sort of, they were just dumping bribes into the Dystopia DEX, and once that stopped, it just seemed like all activity on Dystopia stopped, because bribes are a big reason why people lock up to begin with. Now with Satin DEX, there's more reasons to lock up, even if the bribes weren't like crazy high APRs. You're still getting the emissions and the cash rebases. So we wanted to make sure that it was extremely you are extremely incentivized to lock up either way. But when there's bribes that people can chase and fight over and stuff, that just lets the ecosystem, flourish and makes everything go round, And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we had a mechanism to at least seed, stablecoin bribes, if nothing else, because in bear markets too, bribes are hard to come by. We've seen that for the last however long. And so it's good to have mechanisms to just, keep things interesting, so to speak.
Right. Carving off some of the rebases for bribes is a nifty idea. I'm very curious to see how that'll work out. So now, would you tell us in some detail about the Satin token, please?
Yeah. So the Satin token is, of course, the native token of the Satin DEX. Pretty traditional in that it is emitted. It's a free launch, so it's emitted to LPs, and in typical solidly fashion, governance holders, VE Satin holders, have the ability to lock up, gain their governance power, and direct those emissions to the LPs of their choice. And so all of that's quite normal. The primary difference is that, of course, you pair the Satin with cash to then lock up an LP and provide liquidity at the same time as gaining governance power. And I think that's the biggest deal, is that not only does the locker get all of these benefits, but the protocol benefits massively because, again, liquidity is everything. And so when liquidity is there and it's growing and increasing, that protects the Satin price from sell pressure, which we've seen on pretty much every DEX except for Athena so far, where there's this big pump and then a dump phase. But Athena's brand new, so who knows what's going to happen with it. And we've seen that. And when the dump happens, liquidity dries up in the native LP as well. And when that happens, I mean, the price just gets absolutely demolished, and that's the end of it. And so we wanted to make sure that liquidity was there, and this is the way to do that. And so when the price is protected with deep liquidity by default, then the APRs on the DEX are also defended, right? Once the price gets trashed, when that token is the reward token for the entire DEX, well, all the APRs go away. And now why would anyone participate? And so we wanted to make sure that all these things were in place to create a very sustainable model. And it starts with cash with Satin as a very close runner-up. We are currently, Satin DEX is planning to launch around late February, and we wrapped up a private seed round, and public seed rounds coming. All of the funds that we have raised, which have all been in cash, what we're doing with that is 90% of those funds we are also transferring to protocol-owned liquidity. We're going to pair that cash with pre-minted Satin, and it's just going to be protocol-owned liquidity just to deepen the liquidity even further. And of course, it's not going to be locked up, so it's not going to steal emissions from everybody else. It's not going to dilute anything. But that was the main goal of it, and that's the primary reason why we're doing these funding rounds, because we want to make sure that Satin launches with just the absolute strongest armament of liquidity and use cases and everything as possible.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So can we dive in a little bit more detail to the tokenomics? I understand you're doing 20% to partner protocols, 70% for emissions, and then 5% for the IDO, 5% for the treasury. So is the private round coming out of the treasury allocation of that?
The private round is coming out of where's the private round coming out of? I think that was pre-minted. That was the 5% that was pre-minted for the private round. And so actually I have to look at that graph again. I actually don't remember. I'll be honest with you. I forget where the Satin was coming from.
Yeah, fair. And so are the partner protocol tokens, is anything going to be vested or locked at launch, or is everything going to be open?
So the private seed round was not locked. The public seed rounds and everything going forward will be vested for, I believe it was 4 months. I think it was 4 months. Just to avoid that initial sort of, dump phase.
Yeah, it's definitely nice if you can maintain something like price stability at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, all of this is going towards deepening liquidity to defend against that as well. Because, honestly, I believe it's inevitable. It's going to happen. The price is just going to go, it's just going to moonshot, and there's always going to be that sort of downturn. What we want to prevent, because, that's the market. We can't stop that. But we want to make sure that when that happens, that Satin can weather the storm and then continue to provide value to all participants in the DEX. That's the main goal, and that's the important thing. Because once you do that, then that's it. You've got a successful DEX on your hands. And the sky's the limit at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So last piece on the tokenomics then is how is the community allocation looks like as a mix of farm emissions and direct rewards to locked governance stakers?
So actually, no. We thought about that. We tossed that idea around a lot of, well, do we want to? Because solidly dexes typically have some sort of they call it an anti-dilution mechanism, where if you lock up your VE whatever token, that you would get. I've seen it anywhere from 10% to up to like 20 or even 30% of total emissions go to the VE holders. And so we thought about doing that for maybe like max lockers. Did we want to maybe divert 5% of emissions to give to the max lockers? But I mean, honestly, I think that because this is an LP, and because you're also getting the cash on top of it, like there's a lot of reasons to want to lock up to begin with. And we talked about it, and there was just some other considerations too, like what if another like liquidity layer, or what do they call it, the liquid staking layer, comes on top of Satin, right? Like a Penrose to a Dystopia, Convex to a Curve, that sort of thing. And I mean, the name of their game is to just collect max locked governance tokens and as much as possible, and incentivize people to hand them over. And so we thought it might be better to just have a more of a kind of an even playing field, and not over incentivize the VE holders, because again, they've got brand new revenue streams. I think that it's going to be plenty incentivized as is. And so as far as the partners go, for the first 6 weeks, there will not be gauge voting. So the first 6 weeks, there's going to be manual emissions directed to the partner protocols and some of the main like our 4 pool, the stablecoin pool, and stuff like that just drives liquidity. And so that's why partnering with Satin is a good idea, because you can provide your liquidity and then be a part of that sort of initial collection phase. But then after that, yeah, it's just the 70% go to whoever, and that includes partner protocols.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, controlling the emissions for the first few periods makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just why wouldn't we want it to go to our partners who have already agreed to to support us, take a chance on us, and provide liquidity on our DEX?
Yeah, absolutely. So now how about security? I saw an audited and secured by a SAI badge on the site. Has that audit been completed? Can you just speak to that a little bit?
So it hasn't been completed, and it's one of the reasons why we've sort of pushed off the launch a bit, because we want to make sure that everything is fully audited. Because honestly, like I kind of alluded to before, there's just this DEX is not like I said, it's unfair to call it just a solidly fork. Besides the directed emissions and the locking of something, we made a lot of changes since then. And so because of that, when you have a protocol that deviates from an original code base a good deal, it opens you up to, because you're building new stuff, right? So it opens you up to greater vulnerability. And so we want to make sure that before launch that the audit is completely done. We want to launch a bug bounty program as well. Probably be doing that next month, just because those tend to, sometimes they can be more effective, whereas the audit, you've got you've got the experienced team and they're doing what they do. But sometimes you just want to get that, that white hat hacker in his basement who just wants to, make a few bucks and break your protocol for you. And I find that that's also pretty effective. So we'd like to do both of those before launch, just so that, just so that there's peace of mind. But yeah, I mean, the audit is ongoing. And so it will be done before launch.
Yeah, cool. Nice to hear.
And LedgerOps has also fully audited cash as well. So both are audited.
Going through my notes, looking for another question to ask you. I think we've covered most of the things on my list. Is there anything we're missing?
No, I don't think so. Again, we launch late February, and we're having a public seed round pretty soon for the Satin token, and then after that will be an IDO round. But yeah, I mean, besides that, that's
great. Can you give us details about the public seed round?
Yeah, so the public seed round will be. You can find details in our Discord. The exact wallet address and everything like that. But it's priced at a $10 million valuation, which is, if you look at Athena, it seems to be maybe a little too generous. We kind of talked about that after Athena blew up. We're like, well, but that is what it is. That's what we chose. So that's what we're going with. And then I believe the IDO would be a $15 million valuation. So, but yeah, if you wanted to get in on that, then you can hop over to our Discord and you can find the information there. We have a little thread up for that. But typical seed round stuff, right? You would min cash, you send it to the wallet, you get Satin in return, and keep it moving. The IDO will actually have its own UI, which we already have designed, but for the seed round, it's going to be, again, the traditional sort of method of doing that.
Yeah, cool. Well, it looks like we've got a couple of questions from the audience. Should we get it? All right, if we get a couple audience members up on stage?
Yeah, sure.
No.
Hi.
Hey, Spark, welcome.
Yeah, good morning. So, actually, I love the entire presentation because it was really, really awesome. Like, what you guys are building is really, really fantastic. But my question is concerning the liquidity, because most tokens actually don't have enough liquidity, and then when we try to swap, then we tend to get little of what we actually want, or the little value of the actual amount of token we want to swap. So would you be having like a separate liquidity pool, like your own personal liquidity pool, to help us out when we try to swap these tokens?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, actually. So we've raised, I believe it's 350K from our seed round so far. And what we're doing is 90% of that is being paired. So that's 350K of cash, because that's the only thing we accept. And so we're taking that, pairing it with pre-minted Satin tokens, which is a part of that 5% that you had listed off. And that's just going to be protocol on liquidity, unlocked, not collecting rewards. And so right off the bat, that's going to be what, 700K is that of protocol owned liquidity by default. And then remember that in addition to that, anyone who wants to lock in governance power is also going to be providing liquidity, because they're locking in the Satin Cash LP. The locked governance token and the unlocked, if someone just wanted to provide liquidity, it's the same pool. It's just one is locked and one isn't. So it's all going to that same Satin Cash LP. And so we expect to have very, very deep liquidity, which will, besides defend the price like I had mentioned, also, create a very low slippage and price impact situation. So yes, we liquidity is something that we're heavily focused on, and I think that right off the bat, we're going to be in a much better position than a lot of other protocols that have launched recently.
Yeah,
And
yes.
oh, sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Something else I forgot to mention is that the cash that we are collecting from the funding rounds, it's called opting out. So we're opting out of the rebase for that cash because it's protocol owned. Again, we don't need the money, but it's essentially money. It's cash that's farming still. It's still farming as collateral, but the protocol owned cash is not receiving the rebases. So what that means is essentially the cash that we collect from the seed money, the seed rounds, are just farming for other cash holders, the people who go and they mint. And so right now, our cash capital efficient, I call it the capital efficiency index, is quite high. I mean, it's like 2.5x or something like that. And if you go to our app, you'll see that our 7-day trailing is like, I think it's like 13% APY for that reason. And it's not because it's a trick. It's not because it's, getting token emissions and auto combat. No, it's none of that. It's just very, basic stablecoin farming strategies that are like at the moment, because the TVL is low, 2.5 times more efficient than you can get by doing it yourself. So a lot of good stuff coming from the funding round. But I'm sorry to digress. Yes, liquidity is first and foremost on our mind, and we expect that the Satin token will have plenty of it.
Wow, that's really nice. That's really nice. So the second aspect is concerning the, let's say, slow transaction. Like some of these swap and exchanges, they usually have like delayed transaction, or sometimes they have much of failed transaction. So how do you ensure that when the activities on your exchange or on your platform becomes much, maybe you start getting like, let's say, over 5,000 users, that this thing would not actually slow down everything you're doing or slow down the entire process? And also, how do you ensure that the user interface is friendly? Because that's another issue that most swap face.
Yeah. So I mean, we have. I've seen the proofs of the UI. We have a guy that designs the entire UI for Satin, and I've seen it. It's a little unique. There's certain visual pieces that are not your traditional kind of DEX layout. But besides that, it's very user friendly. It's tough. It's kind of tough to explain, like when no one's like seen it yet. And again, just being on the team, I get to see it. But I mean, all I can say is that I think it'll be very pleasing to the eyes and easy to navigate once it's launched. So I wish I can give you more, but it's at the moment it's just kind of trade secrets. But I don't think you'll have any issues using it when it does launch.
Thank you very much. That's actually great.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for the great question, Spark. And now, Fortune, thanks for coming up on stage.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. My question, I want to know, like, I was going through your site and I discovered you're only audited by one audit, which is Akai. Are you having plan to be audited by either two more? So that's for more trust and liability and reliance on, because you're already audited by one audit. So, like, what's your plan about it?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
Okay. I see my question. I went through your site and I discovered you only have one audit, which is Akai. So I'm asking, like, are you having a plan to add more audits in your?
Are you saying
you
talking about the investment strategies?
No, I'm talking about the audits of your project. Audits.
What?
Yes. So I saw you only have one. So what's the plan? Like, only having one is not cool. Like, for investors trying to invest in your project, they want to see like 2 or 3. So, like, what are you doing about it?
Well, we have the ledger ops like I'm sure you saw on the site for cash. We have the aside audit for Satin, And the other thing that I think is honestly more effective is the bug bounties. We're going to launch a bug bounty program, which basically means that we pay anybody who can go through our code and find faults and find, issues and basically try and hack the protocols. And, if they can successfully do it or they can identify issues, then they get paid for it. And so this is, if honestly, like audits, sometimes like you can get a bad audit. Like you can get a cheap audit that's, not necessarily as thorough as it should be. Again, the audits are usually conducted by a few people, and it's only so many sets of eyes. And so we believe that doing a bug bounty, basically opening it up to the entire public, whoever wants to try and crack, the protocols, is actually a much more effective way of ensuring that everything is integral. So we are getting one audit per protocol, but we're also doing the bug bounty program to to solidify our security.
Okay. My second question, I was going through the economy of the token. I saw that you have 25 pieces of it. And under your economy of how the money goes about, your Satin community allocation, I saw 70%. So like this give me more issue to know why you allocate such a big percent for Satin community allocation.
Satin community allocation. What percentage is that?
70%. Almost all the whole fund is going there. 70%.
Yeah. So 70%. So that's the percentage that's going to the liquidity providers. That's how Satin Dex runs. That's where all the emissions go. That's what, as a VE Satin locker, you can direct those emissions to the LPs that you want to direct them to. And so that's what that is. I mean, that is that's the public's. That's what's being emitted straight to the public.
Okay. So my last question is this: I saw that the total supply is 25 billion.
Yes.
Like, why is it the supply is quite big? Like, what make it to? Why is it supply that quite big? Like, what make it too big? To be quite big. 25 billion is quite big. So I don't know.
Well, it is. It is. It just means it's cheaper, right?
Yeah.
We could have emitted 1,000 tokens, right? But they would have been, probably $100,000 each. So it's just the price and the supply are kind of arbitrary at when it first launches, So like we're launching the seed rounds, you can get those tokens for 0.0004 cents, I think, or something like that. I mean, it's a ridiculously small amount. And again, the price and the supply isn't that important. I don't think we had a major reason why, but I have noticed that a lot of tokens with lower supplies, like let's say, if you're familiar with QuickSwap, their Quick token had, I think it had like a 1 million supply total or something. What they ended up doing was they ended up having to do a token split and multiply that by 1,000. After the token had been out for a couple of years. They decided that, and honestly, it really had no like monetary benefit. It was just in people's minds trying to buy a token that was $200, $300, $400 was just not as it wasn't as nice as being able to, collect hundreds of thousands of tokens for a few $100. And so that we just think that smaller supplies tend to work better. They just feel better to the people who are buying them generally. How many people have you talked to who are like, oh, I would buy Bitcoin, but it's too expensive now, right? It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. Like if you buy 0.0001 Bitcoin now and the price triples in a year or two, well, it was a good buy. It doesn't matter how much of it you have, but that's just the way it is. So we just think that having more supply with a cheaper price just makes people feel better, honestly.
Okay, my last question. If you say so, then are you having like a deflection mechanism to control this price, like in terms of buyback and burning mechanism for this token, in order to maintain the price inflation or control the price inflation for the cash token?
So the cash token doesn't have inflation. What happens is the So yeah, don't get Satin and Cash mixed up. Satin has a 25 billion token total supply. Cash doesn't. Cash is the only time Cash comes into existence is by one trading in USDC, USDT, or DAI to mint it, or if when the yield, when every day when the farming strategies do their thing and yield is acquired, then more cash is minted and sent to the users who are entitled to that yield, but only when there's money in the treasury to back that up. Like there's never going to be a point where there's more cash out there than there is collateral in the treasury. In fact, it's the opposite. The whole point of cash, the whole way we designed it, is that so over time there's much more collateral farming for the cash tokens than there is cash tokens in circulation, so that everybody gets better yield. So yeah, no, there will be that would be a scam. if there was cash out there that wasn't backed up by other stable coins, then that's a very, very bad, very, very bad protocol. We wouldn't do that.
Awesome. Thank you for the eye opening. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And thanks for the questions, Fortune. And Caston, welcome to the stage.
Hey, thank you very much, man.
Hey.
Thanks for bringing me up. So I just have a first question I was actually going to ask, which is about you having two tokens as a DeFi exchange. Why actually create two tokens, which is the Satin and the Cash? Why create two tokens?
Why create why create either token, Satin and Cash?
Yes. Like, why create two? Why not one?
Well, I mean, we believe that both of these tokens are improvements on what has already been put out there. We think that Cash is the best stable coin that's in existence for the reasons that I talked about. For one, it earns you yield, real yield, not just inflation or anything like that. And those yields are going to get bigger and bigger over time the longer you hold. And so that's very cool, and it's stable. You don't have to worry about trying to time the market or anything. Just hold it and forget about it. That's great for people. That's great for protocols. And again, it's all done very sustainably. Satin, while Satin is a more traditional, solidly governance token that people are used to, we've tweaked it so that it's not just this sort of, basically a crap dump token where you get it, you sell it for whatever you can get for it and move on, like a lot of these other liquidity tokens have become. The reason that we want to push the liquidity so much is so that this token is always bringing high APRs to the DEX. And the only way you can do that is if the price is strong, and the only way that you can do that is with liquidity. And so, because of that, that's why we set this whole thing up the way we did with Satin. And yeah, we built it because we think that they're the best versions of their respective, field. Cash as the yield-bearing stable and Satin as the governance token.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. So my second question is about the exchange itself. So will you actually be adding things like cross-chain swap, breach of tokens, whereby you can actually like breach from one token to the other on your exchange, or it's just gonna be like a plain exchange? And also, and in addition to that, I actually saw that you partner with Polygon or something like that, or might actually have a collaboration with Polygon. Is the exchange gonna be multi-chain or just like on one chain?
So our plan is we're going to launch on Polygon, and we're going to make that as successful as possible. I think that where Dystopia went wrong is that they launched on Polygon and were already building something and basically waiting to copy their same DEX onto BSC. And that DEX just absolutely got crushed immediately. Dystopia ended up failing. And so they just rushed it. So what our plan is, honestly, our goal is similar, but we're going to take a much more careful approach. We're going to launch on Polygon. We're going to make sure that the Polygon DEX, Satin DEX, is successful, thriving, sustainable, right? People are bringing in liquidity, trading volume is up, everything's going good. Then we'll consider moving to another chain. And like I said at the very beginning, we are looking at potentially partnering with some other dexes on other chains. And so where we would go would probably not be those chains because, we don't want to compete with our friends. But what we are thinking about doing with Cash is with some of our partners on these other chains is incorporating Cash tokens in the same way that they're incorporated on our DEX. And so our devs would work with their devs and maybe incorporate the Cash token as another like LP reward for, Cash pairs on, let's say, BSC or Optimism or whatever. And so in that way, we would make Cash cross-chain, but it probably wouldn't be just bridging directly from Polygon to another chain, because we looked at that. Honestly, that was at the beginning, that was our goal. We wanted to make one token that was farming across the entire cryptosphere and earning yields and bringing it back. But you open up a lot of risks when you do that. Trying to bridge yield every single day across chains all over the place. We looked at it and we're like, you know what? This could be more risk than we're willing to take on. And so we decided that we're going to stay on Polygon for now. We might bridge or we might expand to other chains, but if we did, it would still probably be contained on that chain. There's other tokens that do something similar, and I think they do it for the same reason. It's a very cool idea, but until the risks can be managed better, we don't want to take that chance with other people's money.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then to top it all, okay, I was actually going to ask this. Will you actually accept the staking of Satin and the Cash rewards? Because if you actually will be accepting that, would there be like a staked Cash? I actually don't know if you understand me. Like how do I put it? Like something like an X Satin, which is like wrapped, by which you that's the staked coin, by which you actually have to unwrap, like after staking or something like that.
Yeah. So what typically happens, and so what you could do is you can take the Satin, you can deposit into a Satin Cash LP and not lock it, and that would just be an LP token, right? Now what you're talking about is a wrapped, locked Satin Cash LP token, which you probably wouldn't be able to do, because what's going to happen is you're going to get a VNFT, similar, very, very similar to what happens on other dexes. And so I'm not sure, and this is because when it comes to dev stuff, I'm pretty ignorant, but I'm not sure if that could be done, because you're receiving a VNFT with governance power. I don't know if you could wrap the token on top of that. I don't think you could. But maybe don't quote me on that, because again, that's not my thing. From a developmental standpoint, I'm not sure if that would be possible. But it's an interesting idea. So you're saying, like, if you were to have VE Satin, so you have the Satin Cash LP, you lock it up, and then you wrapped it so that like the cash rebases and the Satin emissions that would go to that would then be like auto compounded into, and just like basically you wouldn't get the rewards, but it would just auto compound in itself.
Yeah, true.
Okay, interesting thought. I actually, that really hadn't occurred to me.
It actually, right. It sounds like it may be worth doing a wrapped Cash Satin LP alongside or maybe even that as the primary one. Certainly, that's meaningful for U.S. users.
Sure. And I would worry about needing to have two separate pools. That would be my worry, because the big thing is we don't want to split liquidity. We want to make it as deep as possible. So I don't know I doubt you could have a wrapped and unwrapped in the same pool. And I think that's probably, if I brought that up, it's a very cool idea, but if I brought that up, they would probably say that same thing. They'd be like, we don't want to make two separate pools, because now you're just making your liquidity, more shallow, and that's what we're trying to avoid. But very cool idea. I don't know. I'm going to bring that up to them actually, and talk to the founders and see kind of what their opinion is on it, because it's a cool idea. Like you said, from a U.S. standpoint, you avoid all those ugly tax stuff, all those tax implications. Good for the protocol, right? Because you're just instantly relocking, a lot of the rewards and stuff. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. And of course, that means for the user, they don't have to do anything. If they want to keep locking, they wrap it, and it just grows. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
But you're right. In order to avoid people just arbing the two pools, you would have to use wrapped cash everywhere, probably.
Yeah, and so we have wrapped cash. We have wrapped cash. That's a thing. I just don't know how that would work from a locked LP standpoint. That might be too tricky, but I don't know. But yeah, wrapped cash is something you can do now. You can mint cash and then immediately wrap it on our app. But that's not what he meant. So it's a cool idea. I'll definitely bring that up to them and see what they say.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions, Gaston. And It looks like Fortune's got another question.
Yeah. Actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Actually, I was going through your page on Twitter, so I saw that someone cannot even enter into the Twitter community. I mean, the Telegram community. I don't know if the team can try to include Telegram link on your Twitter page so that it'll be easier for accessibility for Telegram.
I don't think we have a Telegram.
Oh, okay.
Page.
You don't have a Telegram. Oh,
yeah, I don't think so. We have Twitter, Discord. Discord's probably the best place to go.
Okay, actually, that will actually skyrocket this other question, which I would like to ask you. Like, aside from the going through your Twitter, going through the Twitter account of the project, I discovered it's just an upcoming project. So the question I want to ask, like, what are your strategies to onboard users into this platform? Like, what are the strategies to bring more awareness apart from AMA like this we're just having?
Yeah. So again, we just started our marketing campaign. So this is part of it. Doing these sorts of AMAs, getting the word out. We're also doing a Galaxy Quest, if you're familiar with that, where it's essentially basically a bunch of you're given like a bunch of quests, they call it, like tasks. It could be, I don't know, mint $5 worth of cash or something like that. Go to one of our partners and do this or that. And you get rewarded for doing things like that. And it also gets people into the ecosystem and understanding kind of how everything works. But honestly, the biggest benefit that we've seen is partnering with well-known protocols with large communities, because what happens is, well, for one, they immediately come and provide liquidity on our DEX. And that's the biggest thing. If you go to a DEX and they have $1 million of TVL, you're probably going to go somewhere else because there's just nothing there. And so having that liquidity right off the bat is massively important. And the other thing is that we're going to do these Galaxy Quests with all of our partners. And so what ends up happening is the partner protocols end up, announcing and getting us exposure to their communities. And when you're talking about a community like KlimaDAO, and ShiDAO and these other really big beefy and all these guys, these are very large communities. And so when you have very reputable partners, sticking up for us, basically, that's very powerful. And so we think that these things are going to bring users in. Our Discord has doubled in the last week, only because we just started our marketing. And so, I believe it's only going to grow from here. But yeah, we've got that's really more of a question for our marketing guy, but these are the things that I know we're doing. And so far they've seemed to be very, very successful. Again, I'm also writing Medium articles, just explaining all this kind of stuff that we talked about in this AMA, just so that people can understand, because it's a little complex. It's even more complex than your average solidly fork when you talk about adding the cash token and the benefits that come with that. And so it's important for people to have sort of the information they need to understand kind of how awesome this is, basically.
Actually, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, cool. Thanks everybody for the great questions. Thanks so much, Chase, for gamely answering so many questions.
Yeah, of course.
and super exciting project. This was great to hear about. So yeah, any closing remarks before I sign us off?
No, just tune into our Discord to keep up with all the various pre-sale that you can get into. Again, our valuations unfortunately seem to be very generous, so you probably want to get in early. And yeah, launch is the end of February, so we're very excited for that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we're excited. And right, based on Athena, it does look like that might have set the target a little low on the value.
I know they just crossed 100 million TVL or something, and we're over here, launching it or valuing us at 10 million.
They'll come back down though. All right. Well, so yeah, thanks so much, Chase. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're grateful for your time and support, and thrilled to be able to spend this time with y'all. If you're, that's it. Please, like and subscribe, and we look forward to doing more of these. I'm Degenic from DeFi Raiders. We'll see you next time.